The first shot wasn't fired by the aliens, it was us. And that's why they're afraid. The air in the briefing room of Sunspire Academy crackled with tension. It wasn't the hum of the overhead lights or the low murmur of voices. It was the feeling of something big, something irreversible, hanging in the balance. The holographic projection of Earth flickered on the center table, spinning slowly like a grim reminder of what was at stake. A war, long simmering, was about to reach its boiling point. At the head of the room stood Captain Erica Quinn, her sharp eyes scanning the faces of the gathered cadets, her face a mask of steel. Her reputation preceded her, ruthless, efficient, and a strategist who knew how to play the game. But today, there was something different in her stance, a barely noticeable tension in her shoulders. The mission was critical. No one needed to say it aloud. They all knew the stakes, the consequences of failure. Humanity had been backed into a corner by an alien empire known as the Scarr, ruthless, calculating, and relentless in their expansion. Earth was just one of the many planets they had claimed, but it was the heart of humanity's resistance, and the Scarr wanted it gone. Quinn's fingers hovered over the holoprojector's controls, her eyes narrowing as she zoomed in on the alien fleet just outside the solar system. It was a sight that should have filled her with dread, but instead, it steeled her resolve. The Scarr had never encountered a species like humanity before, unstoppable, when pushed, and relentless in their pursuit of survival. "Cadets, listen up," Quinn's voice cut through the room. "In an hour, we deploy. But this time, it's different. The Scarr know we're coming. And we know they're waiting." The hum of conversation ceased immediately. Quinn's gaze swept across the room, her voice low but commanding. "This is not a test. This is war. The Sunspire is humanity's last hope, and it's in your hands now. You've trained for this moment, and you will not fail." A cadet barely out of his teens raised a trembling hand, his face pale under the harsh lights. "Captain, are we really ready for this? They have the numbers, the technology." Quinn's eyes flicked to him, sharp and unwavering. "The Scarr have strength, yes. But we have something they don't, our will to survive. Our ingenuity. And in that we are unmatched." She leaned over the table, her fingers brushing the projection of Earth, as though to remind herself of the weight of the task ahead. "They've underestimated us time and time again. We've survived every assault they've thrown at us, and now, it's our turn to strike back. The Sunspire is equipped with the latest tech, and we've got the element of surprise on our side. But we can't afford any mistakes." A low murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Quinn continued, her voice growing even more intense, like the calm before the storm. "Your mission is simple: infiltrate the Scarr fleet, disable their flagship, and buy humanity enough time to regroup. If we fail, Earth falls. And with it, the entire resistance." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "Your objective is not to engage unless absolutely necessary. Stealth is key. Do not get caught. And above all else, remember this: the Scarr will do anything to win. They won't hesitate to wipe us out. But we have something they can't touch: our humanity." There was a silence in the room, as if each cadet was absorbing the full gravity of their task. Then, Sergeant Adams, one of the more experienced members of the crew, spoke up, his voice grim. "You really think we can take them down? Their fleet's massive, Quinn. And their flagship's a fortress." Quinn didn't flinch, her eyes locked on Adams. "If you want to survive, you'll stop thinking about how big they are and start thinking about how we can be bigger. We don't need to defeat them head-on. We need to outsmart them. Outlast them." Adams grunted, clearly unconvinced, but he didn't press the issue. The room was thick with the unspoken question that loomed over them all. What if we fail? "We won't fail," Quinn said, as though reading their minds. "Because failure isn't an option. This is our fight now. And we're going to show the Scarr exactly what happens when they mess with humanity." The words rang out, sharp and final. The cadets stood straighter, their fear replaced with determination. Quinn was right. The Scarr might have the numbers and the firepower, but they didn't have the one thing humanity had in abundance: unrelenting, undying resolve. Suddenly, the comms system crackled to life, interrupting the moment. Captain Quinn, this is Sunspire Command. We've received an emergency transmission. You'll want to see this. Quinn's gaze flicked to the source, her expression unreadable. She nodded to Adams, who quickly moved to the console. The transmission came through, and the image of a Scarr warlord appeared on the screen. His massive form loomed, his features alien but somehow familiar, pale, with dark markings running down his face, and eyes that gleamed with malice. Humans! The warlord's voice was cold, calculating. You will surrender immediately, or we will erase your species from the galaxy. Quinn's lips curled into a faint smile as she stood taller, a fire igniting in her eyes. Tell your master we're not surrendering today. The transmission cut off abruptly, but the message was clear. This was no longer a war for survival. It was a war for dominance. And humanity wasn't about to back down. Prepare for launch, Quinn ordered, her voice once again steady. This is it, cadets. It's time to show the Scarr what humanity is made of. The doors to the briefing rooms slid open, and the cadets filed out, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Quinn stood alone for a moment, staring at the projection of Earth. She whispered to herself, more for her own reassurance than anything else. We will not fail. And with that, the first shot of the war was fired. The Sunspire Academy had been set on its course to the heart of enemy territory, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Sunspire hurtled through the void, its engines humming with the eerie silence that only deep space could provide. The cadets, who had once trained with the intensity of warriors but with the safety of simulations, now found themselves staring down the cold, unblinking eyes of reality. The alien fleet, massive and menacing, loomed ahead. Every instinct in their bodies screamed that they were outmatched, outgunned, and out of their depth. But none of them showed it. They had been trained for this moment. Quinn stood at the command console, her sharp eyes fixed on the status screens as they blinked with real-time updates. The Scarr fleet was vast, its ships equipped with technology light years ahead of anything humanity had ever managed to produce. The Sunspire, though state-of-the-art, was just one ship against a war machine meant to crush civilizations. And yet, Quinn wasn't afraid. Not yet. Status? Quinn asked, her voice calm, betraying none of the tension twisting in her gut. Sergeant Adams, standing to her left, his face drawn and grim, glanced over the readings. We're in range of their perimeter. Scar's ships closing in fast. They've already detected us. Quinn exhaled slowly, her mind racing. She'd known it was coming, but that didn't make the reality of it any easier to accept. The Scarr didn't mess around. The plan had been simple: infiltrate, disable the flagship, and get the hell out before reinforcements arrived. But now, the getting out part seemed a lot more complicated. She glanced over to the holographic map of the fleet's formation. Where's the flagship? Adams nodded towards the farthest end of the enemy cluster. There. It's heavily shielded, but if we can get close enough, we might be able to bypass their defenses. Quinn's eyes sharpened as she examined the ship, the heart of the Scarr war machine. If they could destroy the flagship, they could cripple the entire fleet. But getting close enough to even touch it without being obliterated was another story. We're not going in hot, she ordered, her tone sharp. Stealth is still our best weapon. Deploy the cloaking device. Prepare to engage at half speed. No need to alert them to our presence unless we absolutely have to. As the crew scrambled to execute their orders, Quinn moved to the side, taking a moment to gather her thoughts. She couldn't shake the nagging feeling in her chest, the sense that something was off. It was too quiet, too calm, like they were being watched. The Scarr were crafty. And when it came to war, they never left anything to chance. Captain, I'm picking up unusual readings. Lieutenant Mendez called from his station, his voice filled with concern. Quinn turned sharply. Explain. Mendez's fingers flew over the console. There's something off about their fleet formation. They're not following standard protocols. It's like they know exactly where we're going. A chill ran down Quinn's spine. They couldn't have known. No one could have, At least, that's what they thought. What are we dealing with, Mendez? I don't know yet, Captain, Mendez replied, his voice tense. But it doesn't look like an accident. They're maneuvering like they're waiting for us. The realization hit Quinn like a punch to the gut. They had been walking into a trap. The Scarr had been ready for them from the moment they entered the system. Adams! Quinn barked. What's our time to intercept? 30 minutes, Captain, Adams replied, his face grim as he adjusted the ship's trajectory. We're close. Too close. Quinn's mind raced, trying to keep up with the sudden shift in plans. Initiate evasive maneuvers. Bring us around behind the asteroid field. They won't expect that. Mendez, prepare a decoy transmission. Give them a false target. Mendez nodded without hesitation, his fingers working rapidly as he launched the feint. For a moment, the room held its breath. If they couldn't get the enemy fleet to focus on the decoy, they were finished. And then, as if to mock their efforts, the Scarr flagship launched a salvo of energy blasts, all targeting the Sunspire. The ship rocked violently as the shields flared to life, absorbing the impact. Alarms blared, and the crew scrambled for control. Quinn gripped the console, her knuckles white, as she watched the enemy ships adjust their trajectories, closing in fast. Shields holding at 78%, Adams reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. But we can't take many more hits like that. Pull us out of their line of sight, Quinn ordered. Full reverse, engage the secondary thrusters. But before they could react, the Sunspire shuddered again. This time, it wasn't a hit, it was a jarring force from within the ship. A loud crack echoed through the hull, followed by the unmistakable sound of an explosion. Report! Quinn shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Fire in the lower deck! Lieutenant Harper cried, her face drained of color. Engine room's been hit. We've lost power to the starboard thrusters. The ship lurched again as the engine room fire spread. Quinn cursed under her breath. They couldn't afford to lose the Sunspire. Not now. Not when they were so close to the flagship. Adams, get us moving! Full speed ahead. Mendez, any way to shut down their targeting systems? Mendez worked furiously at his console, his face grim. I can try to jam their comms, but it's not going to be enough. We need to disable their flagship, Captain. If we don't, we'll be sitting ducks. Quinn's mind raced, searching for a way to turn the tide. Then, something clicked. Wait, she said, her voice suddenly sharp. The flagship. We can't just disable it. We need to turn their own weaponry against them. They're too reliant on their central command systems. If we can breach their mainframe, we can reprogram their weapons to target their own ships. It was a long shot. A dangerous one. But if it worked, it would give them the upper hand. Adams, she said, locking eyes with him. We're going in. Full speed. Get us to that flagship, now! As the crew scrambled to execute the order, Quinn stood tall, her resolve hardening. The plan had changed, but their mission hadn't. This was humanity's fight for survival, and she would be damned if they were going to lose. The Sunspire surged forward, cutting through the blackness of space, heading straight for the heart of the enemy fleet. And with every passing second, the war for humanity's future moved one step closer to its final confrontation. The moment the Sunspire engaged full speed, the world outside the ship turned into a blur of streaking light and shadow. The massive enemy fleet, once a terrifying mass of firepower, was now nothing more than a looming obstacle. Every instinct screamed for Quinn to stop, to avoid the direct confrontation. But there was no time for hesitation. Brace for impact! Adams shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos of alarms and hissing systems. The ship rattled as enemy fire collided with their shields, sending jolts of electricity through the hull. Quinn gritted her teeth, gripping the console as she watched the Scarr flagship grow larger, its sheer size and power still overwhelming despite the chaos. They were close, too close. They had only one shot at this. Engine power holding at 60%, Lieutenant Harper reported, her voice strained as she worked furiously to keep the Sunspire from falling apart. "We'll be in range of the flagship in 20 seconds. Not soon enough," Quinn muttered. She needed time to breach their systems, time to take control. And in the few remaining seconds, her mind raced faster than the ship itself. No room for failure. "Prepare the override code," Quinn barked, turning to Mendez. "If we're going to hack into their systems, now's the time. Do it." Mendez's hands flew across the control panel. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he typed furiously, his voice barely audible over the hum of the ship. "I'm in, but their firewall is stronger than we anticipated. I'm bypassing the secondary defenses, but we need another 5 minutes." 5 minutes? Adams said, disbelief in his voice. "We don't have 5 minutes. That flagship is about to open fire again." Quinn didn't look at him. She didn't have to. The solution was simple. They had to buy Mendez time. The Sunspire had to keep moving, keep dodging, or they'd be vaporized before they could even come close. "Adams, get us in position," Quinn ordered, her eyes scanning the battlefield. "Take out their smaller ships if you have to. Every second counts." "Understood," Adams replied, his fingers working rapidly at the controls. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers." The Sunspire jerked again as a massive blast from one of the Scarr ships rocked the vessel, throwing the crew to the floor. Quinn slammed against the sidewall, but before she could regain her bearings, she saw the enemy ships closing in, faster than expected. The flagship was preparing to unleash its full firepower. "Captain?" Mendez shouted, panic in his voice. "I'm losing the override signal. They've detected the hack." "Do not lose it, Mendez!" Quinn snapped. "Get that damn code through!" Adams, seeing their situation worsening, slammed the control panel, pulling off impossible maneuvers, twisting the Sunspire between two enemy warships. The ship creaked under the pressure, but it held firm. "Adams!" Quinn barked again, her voice filled with urgency. "We need one shot, *1 shot at that flagship. If we don't take it now, it's over." Adams' fingers tightened on the controls, and in that moment, the Sunspire broke free from the tightening ring of enemy ships, diving toward the heart of the Scarr flagship's defenses. "Prepare for impact," Adams warned. "Almost there," Mendez muttered, sweat soaking his brow as he focused on the display in front of him. "Just give me 10 more seconds." The Sunspire was now on a direct course for the flagship. Quinn could see the massive ship's weapons preparing to fire again. The moment stretched as time seemed to slow, and she could feel her pulse racing in her ears. 5 seconds! Mendez shouted. The ship jolted as another blast struck their shields, this time destabilizing their power core for a brief moment. But Quinn didn't flinch. Her eyes were locked on the target. "Now!" Mendez cried. In a single, perfect moment, Mendez executed the override. The system whined as the Scarr flagship's weapons, once poised to destroy them, suddenly turned and aimed their sights at the other ships in the fleet. A ripple of shock ran through the enemy ranks as their own weapons were turned against them. The first volley of fire tore through the Scarr warships, ships larger than the Sunspire itself, but completely unprepared for the sudden turn of events. Quinn's heart skipped a beat as she saw the flagship's shields flicker, its main guns misfire, and chaos erupted among the enemy lines. "Hit them again, Mendez!" Quinn shouted. But the second attack came too quickly. The Scarr flagship, now reeling from the chaos they'd unleashed, fired one final blast, a desperate, furious attempt to eradicate the Sunspire. The blast slammed into the Sunspire's side, and for a moment, Quinn thought they were done. The ship bucked and groaned as its power core began to fail. Lights flickered and alarms wailed. "Shields down to 30%! Harper yelled, struggling to keep them operational. "We're not going to survive another hit like that!" Quinn's voice cut through the panic, cold and focused. "Adams, get us to the flagship's control center, now!" The Sunspire jolted again as Adams pushed the ship into another tight maneuver, sliding underneath the massive flagship. Quinn's mind raced as they closed in on the heart of the enemy vessel. The shields had to hold just a little longer, just enough time for them to plant the charge, to finish the job. Ready the detonation charges, Quinn ordered, her gaze steely. We end this here. As Adams piloted the ship directly under the flagship, Mendez transferred the hack into the ship's core, sabotaging the alien vessel's systems further. With the countdown to the Sunspire's final push in place, Quinn felt the weight of everything they had endured. The moment they detonated the charge, it would either be their salvation or their damnation. Charge is set, Mendez confirmed. Quinn nodded. Do it. The explosion that followed was a deafening roar, as though the entire galaxy itself was tearing apart. The Sunspire shook violently as the flagship erupted in a fiery blaze of alien metal and shattered shields. And then silence. For a brief moment, Quinn allowed herself to breathe, the weight of the battle lifting from her shoulders. But as the Sunspire drifted, battered and broken, toward the wreckage of the Scarr flagship, she knew this was just the beginning. The enemy fleet had been crippled. But the war was far from over. Status? She asked, her voice steady despite the exhaustion clawing at her. Flagship destroyed, Harper said, her tone filled with disbelief. The fleet's in disarray. We're getting reports of major damage across their ranks. But Quinn wasn't satisfied. Not yet. We're not done yet, she said quietly, eyes narrowing as she looked toward the remnants of the Scarr fleet. They'll be back. And we'll be ready. For humanity, this victory was only the beginning. The war had only just begun. And Quinn would make sure they didn't lose it again,